Welcome back everyone, it's Eric from Rare Candy here. Today we are back with another Sword and Shield deck profile. This time we're going to be taking a look at the Morpeko Dolls deck. This is definitely a deck that I noticed a couple people were hoping to see in the comment sections of a couple of our videos. So here we are, finally got around to covering it and checking it out. And this is actually the same list too that was featured in our recent Testing Grounds video. So if you guys do want to see how this deck looks in action, I'll be sure to have a link down below in the description. That way you guys can check that out as well. So let's dive right in and take a look at this deck and see how it's going to be performing. So up first, we do have 4 copies of Jirachi. This is going to be our engine that we are going to be running with. I did see that, I believe it was Takuya Yoneda, if I remember correctly, actually did pretty well with Morpeko Dolls playing a Cinchino engine. So I want to try that out eventually as well. But Jirachi seemed like the natural sort of route to go here. So that's what I'm kind of exploring first. Seems like it will help set up pretty well this way. So of course, Jirachi has the Stellar Wish ability here. Of course, if once during your turn, if it's your active Pokemon, you can put it to sleep. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, get a trainer card you find there. So this deck I have noticed is quite combo reliant. Every turn, you're kind of just trying to skate by until you get your next combo piece. And Jirachi's really good at finding those combo pieces for you, especially since they do tend to be very trainer card reliant in this deck. And of course, whenever we get something gets knocked out, Jiraiya's just a great Pokemon to thrust forward and promote in between knockouts. So he's going to be the main engine we're going to be using to getting up and running. But from there, we have our main attacker. It's going to be 3 copies of Morpeko V. So Morpeko is a new Pokemon V we're getting from Sword and Shield. 170 HP, gives up 2 prizes, much like the old GXs and EXs. But its first attack, not too relevant, just colorless energy 20 and 20 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. But really the reason we're playing this card is for that second attack. For 2 lightning and a colorless is 150, and you discard an energy attached to Morpeko V and switch it with one of your benched Pokemon. So of course the whole idea with this deck is we're trying to abuse the second attack over and over and just switch into the Lillie's Pokédoll and make sure our opponent can't take prizes, or at least make it as hard as possible for our opponent to get some prizes against Morpeko V. And thanks to other cards like Recycle Energy in the deck, we actually don't even have to worry about really running out of energy with this first effect here. Of course, we also have things like Taboo Koko Prism Star in the deck as well, and Thunder Mountain. So even though this is, I think, kind of a hefty attack cost, we have a couple of different ways that cheating energies into play. And with Morpeko V basically always being on our bench, and having other stuff in the active spot, we usually have time to build up multiple manual attachments before a Morpeko goes down. So I think the energy cost is definitely the thing that is the biggest hindrance to this card potentially, but I think there's enough ways in the current format to get around that, and we'll show off some of those ways that we're going to be playing here in just a bit. So up next from there though, we are playing 1 copy of Morpeko V Max as well. So even though this isn't the star of the show, I do like Morpeko V Max just as a potential late game closer. So Morpeko V Max has 300 HP, a good bit tankier than Morpeko. Gives up 3 prizes, of course, like the new VMAXs do, and just has 1 attack here for the same attack cost as Morpeko's second attack does 180, and spreads 20. So this attack really isn't particularly groundbreaking, but I really like Morpeko in the late game specifically. Like, let's say you've already run out of all of your Pokédolls, and you really can't afford to sacrifice any more Pokemon in the active spot. You can evolve into Morpeko V Max, and just say, hey, you only have 1 prize left, or maybe they just have 2 prizes left, whatever it may be. And I have 300 HP, and I'm going to knock out your next attacker, and I'm just going to sweep you with this thing. I don't think you can deal with this 300 prize Pokemon very effectively to take your last knockout. So that's kind of the role I found for Morpeko V Max. It's definitely not the center of the deck by any means, but it is nice to have as a potential late game closer. So up next from there, though, we do have another additional Pokemon that is going to be Taboo Koko V. So this is another sort of secondary attacker. I originally had Morpeko V, or a 4th Morpeko V, but I really found I wasn't liking that just because Morpeko has an annoying 2 retreat cost. And honestly, you don't need more than 3 Morpeko V in the course of a game. You just don't. So I like Taboo Koko V. It's a much better starter if you do have to start with it. Has a 0 retreat cost. Also, its first attack for a lightning does 20 and you draw 2 cards. Not bad if you're just trying to get set up. But also, it's our heaviest hitter in the deck and allows us an option to maybe take a big knockout out of nowhere. So its second attack for 2 lightning and a colorless is 200, and this Pokemon can't attack on the next turn. So 50 base damage higher than the Morpeko V, so it's going to be a lot easier for us to potentially get a big one-hit knockout on maybe a tag team or an opposing Pokemon V than it would be if we were just attacking with the regular Morpeko V here. So I definitely don't like the idea of a fourth Morpeko V. I think I am liking the Koko instead of the fourth Morpeko. Definitely liking the flexibility it gives us. So those are going to be all of our attackers, guys. We do have some other support Pokemon though, so let's check out what we have. So even though Jirachi is our primary draw engine in the deck, we have some other support Pokemon on the bench to help us draw some more cards. The first of which is going to be the new Oranguru from Sword and Shield. This is definitely becoming, I've said this in a bunch of my videos that I've recorded with this card, and definitely becoming one of my more favorite cards that's come out in the set. And it has a really simple ability here. As long as Oranguru is in play, you can replace a card in your hand with the top deck of your deck. So, let's say you already played your supporter for turn, but you whiffed whatever combo piece you might need. As an example, you can, from there, say, I'm going to try to dig one card deeper for turn, and you can replace a card in your hand with the top card of your deck and kind of draw it one card deeper. I also really like Oranguru in conjunction with Marnie, which we do play in this deck. So let's say we have a custom catcher and we're trying to dig for a second one. We can put one of them back on top of our deck to guarantee we draw one of the two, and then hopefully the Marnie might get us there the rest of the way as well. So those are kind of some of the main uses you'll see for Oranguru. Up next from there, though, we have one copy of Oricorio GX as well. So Oricorio GX, not a card I've really been a big fan of since it's come out, but I think it actually has some potential here. So it has this ability, if one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn, you can draw 3 cards. So this is pretty cool because we are a combo reliant deck, and being able to just chain those Electro powers, those Lillie Pokedolls, whatever it might be every turn, is really important for us. And one thing I do like about this is the fact that when Lillie's Pokédoll gets knocked out, that still counts as a knockout. Even your opponent doesn't get any prizes, so you can still use this even when your Pokédolls go down as well, which is really, really cool. And I think overcomes one of the big disadvantages Oricorio normally has in 2 and 3 prize decks. Normally, you can't really get very many repeated uses out of this, but since every time your opponent's taking a knockout, they get 0 prizes, you're going to get consistent use out of this effect throughout the course of a game here. I also really like Oricorio GX in case we go up against a deck that is playing Absol, because Absol is really going to make it annoying to use our Jirachi engine. So if we are playing as a Pokemon or a deck that has Absol, we can maybe put more emphasis on our Oranguru and Oricorio GX to kind of find our combo pieces whenever we might need them. Now, granted, this is still a Pokemon GX, so we do need to keep that in mind. It does give up 2 prizes and can be brought up by Great Catcher. So if Great Catcher still sees a lot of play in the Sword and Shield era, we might have to reconsider this spot. But, with things like Pokemon Catcher coming out in the new set and Custom Catcher looking to gain a little bit of a buff with Pokemon V being injected into the mix, Oricorio might be actually a little bit safer than it may have been a couple months ago before Sword and Shield came out. So up next from there, though, we have a couple of tech Pokemon. We have one copy of Mew, of course, for that bench barrier ability here. So, of course, it's going to prevent damage done to our bench Pokemon. Very important because we basically are always going to try to have Lillie's Pokédoll in the active spot. And if we are playing against a deck that can snipe us, like Pikarom, or a deck that uses Naganadel GX, we really need to prevent against that, specifically because of the amount of HP that Morpeko has. So Tag Bolt can one-shot Morpeko from the bench. Naganadel's Venom Shot can knock out Morpeko from the bench. So Mew is going to be very important at forcing our opponent to go through those Lillie's Pokédolls, or force them to have something that can place damage counters instead of doing actual damage. So that's the whole reason for our Mew here. We also have one copy of Absol as well. So Absol, of course, really strong card for that ability. It's going to increase the retreat cost of your opponent's basic Pokemon by 1. So it's really going to be annoying for decks that are also reliant on Jirachi. And just in general, we're a very defensive deck, and we're basically just trying to make it hard for our opponent to take knockouts on us. So the Lillie's Pokédolls, which you'll see, do that. We're going to make it harder for them to use their engine. We have some other disruption in this list as well. And Absol is just another way to make it harder for our opponent to take prizes. And then from there, to round out our Pokemon line, guys, we just have one copy of Taboo Koko Prism Star. This is going to be one of the ways we can cheat energy into play. So usually I find myself using this more in the mid to late game as opposed to the early game, once we've already used this attack a couple times to get energy in the discard pile. So of course, if you guys aren't familiar with the Tapu Koko, it has that Dance of the Ancients ability. You can put it in the Lost Zone and then attach 2 lightning energies from discard to 2 different Pokemon on your bench. So another way we can just cheat our attachments into play and get attacking a little bit quicker. So going on to our supporter cards, we have 4 copies of Marnie to kick things off. So Marnie, this is a new card from Sword and Shield that we're getting. It says each player shuffles their hand and puts their hand at the bottom of their deck. You draw 5 and your opponent draws 4. So having a hard draw 5 like this, I think is really, really cool. And the fact that this is kind of a disruption card makes it even better. It really just goes along with the whole theme of the deck. We're just basically trying to deny our opponent taking prizes. And Marnie is a way to, just keep their hand size, as low as possible. Absol's going to limit their retreating options a little bit more. And of course, Lillie's Pokedoll is going to make it hard for them to get prizes. So it's just another way. We're going to make it harder on our opponent to play the game here. And with the Orengar, like I said, you can even do some cool combos where you can preserve key resources and put it on top of your deck to draw back into if need be. So next up from there, we have 3 copies of Volkner in this deck as well. We are a lightning deck and pretty reliant on different item cards to continue our strategy. So Volkner is a nice fit here. So you search your deck for a lightning energy and an item card, put them into your hand. So we can grab lightning energy, Lillie's Pokedoll, just as an easy example, or lightning energy, custom catcher, whatever we might need. Just going to be a nice search card that really pairs nicely with the type of deck that we're running. And then from there, we also have 2 copies of Rosa as well to round out our supporter cards. Rosa is kind of like a Volkner on steroids in the mid game. You get to search your deck. Well, if one of your Pokemon is knocked out during your last turn, or your opponent's last turn, you get to search your deck for a basic energy, a trainer card, and a Pokemon. So, of course, this is just going to, it's a little bit more conditional than the Volkner, but allows us to dig a little bit more aggressively. So, especially if you have Oricorio GX in play, and you have a Rosa, you can have a really insane turn where you can Stellar Wish to get a trainer card, you can draw 3 with Oricorio and play Rosa, and even though there's not many physical draw option, our search cards here tend to be really, really strong. So that's going to be our whole supporter lineup. I think maybe I would like 1 additional supporter card in this deck, maybe like a 4th Volkner, or maybe even finding room for like 1 or 2 Cynthia or Professor's Research. Not sure, but I think I would like literally just 1 more supporter. I think that would feel a little bit nicer in this deck. But overall, I still really like the suite of supporters that we're working with right now, though. So from there, we have 1 copy of Thunder Mountain Prism Star as well. This is going to be another way we can cheat energy into play. It's going to reduce the attack cost of our lightning Pokemon by 1 lightning energy less. So this is another way we can just get attacking a little bit quicker with our Morpeko Vs here. From there, we have 4 copies of Lillie's Pokedoll, the card I've been mentioning over and over in this deck, and really one of the other just really big main pillars of the deck that really makes it as decent as it is. So of course it's an item card, but you can play it as a 30 HP colorless basic Pokemon, and it doesn't give up a prize when it gets knocked out, and if it's your active Pokemon and you want to remove it from play, you can put it back on the bottom of your deck. So sometimes this can even be kind of like a pseudo like retreating card for you sometimes as well if you want to go that route. But yeah, using this to deny our opponent taking knockouts with Morpeko V. Up next, we have 4 copies of Electro Power as well, just to increase our damage output a little bit. So of course, each one is going to increase our lightning Pokemon's damage by 30. Morpeko V, its damage output is decent enough. We're going to 2-shot basically everything in the game with this thing. But sometimes Electro Power, if your opponent has healed a little bit, maybe with Mallow and Lana or something like that, Electro Power can kind of pick up the slack and ensure that you can always like 2-shot things. And you can even 1-shot certain things in the format as well, like some of the existing Pokemon GX in the format, like opposing Oricorios, or like Dedenne GX, you only need 1 E-Power, and you can knock out something like that as well. So from there, we have 4 copies of Quick Ball as well, another new insanely good card that we're getting in Sword and Shield. You just discard a card from your hand, search your deck for a basic Pokemon, so we can find everything in the deck outside of our 1 Morpeko V Max. But that's kind of where Rosa comes in handy. That's one way we can search that out instead. But by and large, Quick Ball is going to kind of do the job that we need and find anything in our deck. So from there, we have 4 copies of Custom Catcher as well. So opting for Custom Catcher here, like I kind of mentioned, now with Pokemon V in the mix, I think Great Catcher does take a slight hit. So I'm going to be favoring the Custom Catchers here to give us some flexibility in terms of what we want to knock out. So if you guys aren't familiar with the card, it has 2 different effects. The first one says just draw until you have 3, or if you play 2 of these at the same time, you can switch your opponent's active with one of their bench Pokemon. So it just allows us to freely choose what we want to take knockouts on. And thanks to cards like Volkner and Rosa, it's really not too hard to find the second copy when you do need it. That being said, though, we still have 1 copy of Great Catcher in the deck. So of course, Great Catcher, it's only going to be for Pokemon GXs and EXs, but you discard 2 cards in your hand to be able to play it only playing the one. Like I said, Pokemon GX are going to be slightly less popular now that we have Pokemon V being played, but nevertheless, it's still good just to guarantee a knockout on that last Dedenne that's sitting there on your opponent's bench as an example. Or, you know, maybe their Mewtwo Mew that already got damaged. You can clean up your knockout with that, whatever it might be. So I think the one great catcher is still nice, and we can find it whenever we need it with a card like Rosa, Volkner, etc. So up next from there, we have 3 copies of Switch in the deck as well. So Switch, of course, we're playing the Jirachi engine. I like playing Switch in addition to escape boards for that reason. Normally, I think an average amount of switches you'd see in a Jirachi engine are 2. I think that's like the low number. I think we don't need 4 in a deck like this, so 3 is kind of the sweet spot I've found myself on. Especially like that because Morpeko V in particular has kind of an annoying retreat cost, so Switch is going to allow us to maybe switch out of this if we do have to start with it and switch into something like a Jirachi as an example. So up next from there, we also have 2 copies of a skateboard as well. Of course, no Jirachi deck would be complete without some copies of these. So it's going to reduce our retreat cost by 1 and allow us to retreat through status conditions like sleep and paralysis. So of course, whenever we go to sleep with Jirachi, we can just retreat for free with a skateboard. Also can be nice on other things too, like Absol, Mew, or Choreo, etc. if we do have to retreat something else. But of course, mainly just going to be for Jirachis. Up next from there, we have 1 copy of Stadium Nav in the deck as well. So you flip 2 coins for each head, search your deck for a Stadium card, put it into your hand. So this is like effectively a second out that we have to our Thunder Mountain. Being able to reduce our energy cost, I think it's going to be really important in this deck in particular, just because Morpeko's attack cost is like slightly clunky. And we're playing this too because we actually can't get Thunder Mountain off Volkner. We're going to need a way to get an item card to find our Thunder Mountain if we are playing the Volkner. So that's why the whole reason we're playing this one here. Going on from there, we have 1 copy of Counter Gain. This is going to be another way to cheat some additional, not really cheat energies into play, but it's another way we can make our attacks a little bit easier to get off. And so Counter Gain, it's a tool card, and it only works if you are behind on prizes, which isn't really uncommon with this deck. It's definitely a slower, more defensive deck. So whenever we go down prizes, it's going to reduce our attack cost by 1 colorless energy, meaning Morpeko only suddenly needs 2 lightning energies to be able to attack. And actually, if you get Thunder Mountain down the same turn, you only technically need to attack for a single energy. So Counter Gain is just the last of the different ways we're going to kind of try to make our attacks a little bit more flexible with Morpeko V. From there, we also have 1 copy of Pokemon Communication in the deck as well. So the whole reason for Pokemon Communication is the fact that we actually can't find Morpeko V Max without the help of Rosa. So Pokemon Communication is a way we can, it's a trainer card we can find off of Volkner or Jirachi potentially to help get this whenever we might need it. I think you maybe could cut this and just rely on Rosa if you want to. But I'd like the option at the very least, especially since you can find it with Volkner and Jirachi, whereas you can't find any other way to get your Morpeko VMAX without Rosa. So that's why we're playing the Communication. If nothing else, guys, it's just like a 5th search card a lot of the time, which isn't that bad either. And then from there, to round out our trainer cards, we have 1 copy of Reset Stamp, just to round out these trainers. Of course, you force your opponent to shuffle their hand into their deck and draw equal to the amount of prize cards they have left. So just another way we can disrupt our opponent. Like I said, guys, the whole theme of the deck is we're trying to deny our opponent taking prize cards and make it hard on them to play the game. So with things like Absol, Pokédoll, Marnie, even Reset Stamp, etc., we have a good bit of ways to do that. It's just another tool in our toolbox of disruption cards. And so from there, going on to our energy, we have for our lightning energy, we have 2, 4, 6, 8 copies of lightning energy in total. So it's not a very big count, but with things like Thunder Mountain, Koko, Counter Gain, that should be enough lightning energy to carry us throughout the course of a game. But we also do have 2 copies of recycle energy as well. Recycle energy is pretty important just because once we get this established on a Morpeko V, every time we have to discard energy, we can discard recycle energy instead of a lightning energy and ensure that we don't run out of our main lightning energies here. So yeah, guys, that is going to be our look at Morpeko V. I've really been enjoying this deck. It's actually kind of been a pleasant surprise, how well it's been doing. I think one of the big things that might determine how far this archetype goes is the gusting effects that people wind up playing. So if Custom Catcher winds up being in every deck, Morpeko V might get a little bit worse just because the whole thing is forcing your opponent to deal with Lillie's Pokédoll and preserving your Morpeko Vs on the bench. And if you're not able to do that, the deck gets a good bit worse. So depending on how popular things like Custom Catcher and Pokemon Catcher are, and in addition to things like Fion as well, that could change how viable this deck is. But you know, for the moment, with things kind of being up in the air, I definitely think the Morpeko V deck is still one you guys should be putting effort into testing and seeing how it's going to perform for you. But I hope you guys did enjoy this deck profile. Of course, if you did enjoy this content, feel free to like and subscribe. And if you can, consider supporting this channel by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/rarecandytcg. Some of our patrons actually had early access to this list a week before it even got posted on the channel. So if you guys want to learn about how to get some cool content and support the channel in the process, I'll have a link down below in the description. Or if you'd prefer to support us by picking up some merch from our online store, rarecandytcg.com, it would mean a lot. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.